Okay. Today we're going to start by a Mishnah, right? The Mishnah on 9b. Yeah. Testament base. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this course of our learning, we should have this Mikdash immediately. Learning also in this course of to have a good gold Basper in Yemen. And also learning for this course that we need to refer Shleima. Okay. Mishnah starts. Someone is riding on an animal. Rasa Metzia. He sees an object on the floor. So he says to his friend that's not on the animal, someone that's on the ground, he says, Tanoli, he says, give it to me. So Natla, the person took it. Now, over here we're going to have a discussion when it says that he took it. It doesn't mean that he took it for himself. It doesn't mean that he took it for his friend. Because he picks it up from the ground. So let's assume that he picked it up for his friend. And afterwards he says, before he hands it to him, he says, Ani zachisibah. So he picked it up for his friend, and then immediately changed his mind and says, I'm acquiring it. The question is, did his friend acquire it? But the Gemara Mishnah says right away, Zachaba, he acquired it, not his friend.
So he would be, in this case, like a shliach.
As if he's a shliach to do it, and he retracts and he takes it for himself. Yeah, so I just added in a halacha into this, that when you pick something up for your friend doesn't acquire it immediately. Or you don't have to learn the Mishnah like that. You can learn, we'll see in the Gemara, you can learn the Mishnah. He never picked it up for his friend. He picked it up for himself.
Probably need to have one.
Any improvement? Okay. So if when he gave it to him, Amar, then he says he already put it into the rider's hands. Amar, he says, I acquired it first. Then he hasn't taken anything. He hasn't acquired it. He has said nothing. Because once he gave it to him, then he can't change his mind. Now, Rashi goes into a mimanavshach over here. Rashi says, if when he picked it up, he acquired it for his friend, okay, then his friend acquired it immediately, then he can't change his mind. If he picked it up for himself and now gave it to his friend, so then he gave it to his friend. His friend was kainet. So either way, his friend acquired it. Let's say he picked it up without intention to acquire it and didn't intend to acquire it for his friend. So his friend acquires it immediately when he takes it from his hand. Now he's changing his mind. Okay. Tanan Hassam. We learned over there. The Gemara goes on. This is classic Gemara. This is a yeshiva style Gemara. Mishalikid is a paya. Someone is collecting paya. That means paya is the corner of the field that's left for the poor. We have a guy that's in there that's collecting. Now, he's not the owner of the field. He's also not a poor guy. Okay? That's what we think. Amar, and he says, this is good stuff. I have a friend that's poor. Let me take it from my friend that's poor.
Well, what constitutes someone that's poor or not?
If he has a steady income, then he's not poor. And if he has a certain amount of savings, he's not poor.
Can we define?
That's a specific amount. I think it's 200 or something. I'm not sure exactly. 200 coins. He's not poor. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, if they know this for him. Yeah. You know the joke about the guy that found someone that was very poor. He tells his friend, this Purim, I was mama shade to the mitzvah. I gave this guy is so poor. His friend says, who was it? Says, no, I'm saving him for next year. Okay, so he says, so Rabbi Eliezer says, Zachalai, friend, the ani acquired it. The Chachamim say, that ani, that poor guy that he picked it up for, is actually a poor guy, and he doesn't get this either, because this fellow had no rights to take food that's meant for the poor for one specific person when there's other people that need it, and this guy has no rights to it anyway. He's just a wealthy guy walking by.
So he can't be a shliach. There's some people that can't walk or something. And you take.
If he makes him a shliach, if the ani makes him a shliach, that would be different. That's what it seems from Rashi. Amar Ula says, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who's a sage in Eretz Yisrael, says, Machlekes me'asher la'ani. We're talking about over here where there's a wealthy person that's trying to take food from what the poor are supposed to get, and he's taking it for one individual poor person. The Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Rabbi Eliezer holds that migudi by mafke nechse v'havi ani v'chazilei hashtanami chazilei migud zachanam shezachanam lechavre. The only way you're allowed to take something from this is that if you could take it for yourself, then you could take it for others. Right? Now, the only thing is that he can't take it for himself because he's rich. So Rabbi Eliezer says, oh, don't worry about that. Every rich person could be poor. They just have to make everything they have ownerless. So now we'll say, potentially he could be a poor man by making everything ownerless. And potentially, second potential is that if he wants, after he would be a poor guy, he could actually take it for himself. So you see, he has rights to it. He has rights that he can take it for the other guy as well. So he's saying two potentials over here.
This is
we call it two migus.
Granted that he's volunteering to give to the other person. He's not being asked.
No, it's paya. So it's paya. It's the corner of the field where poor people come and collect. Here's a guy that's walking by the field that's not poor, but he says, oh, there's good stuff there. And I have a friend that's poor, so he takes it for his friend. So Rabbi Eliezer says that his friend acquired it. Rabbanan Sabri, the Rabbanan hold Chad Migo Amrina, Tre Migo Le Amrina. We would say Migo once. We would say that if he's a poor guy, we would say that he could take it. But a rich guy can't take it. Aval Miani Lani. But if the person would be poor, and he's saying, I already got some, what do they have over there? Asparagus. I already have asparagus. How much asparagus am I going to eat? So I'll take this from my friend that's poor. So that everyone would everyone would say that he could take that. If he can take it for himself, he can take it for his friend. That everyone would agree to. And this is what Ula holds. Ula holds that if you can take it for yourself, you can take it for your friend. So machlokes, if you can't take it for yourself, but if theoretically you could take it for yourself because he's a rich person, so then he could make everything ownerless. Rabbi Eliezer would also agree that he can take it, right?
Is there any issue, like if, for example, if it's like a certain type of fruit and that his kids or his wife might like, would he be able to pick it up?
Yeah, well, for his family, he could take. It's people he's responsible for. You're talking about a poor person. If the poor person or a rich person, the rich person, it's machlekes. If it's a poor person, then according to Ula, everyone agrees. Amalei Rav Nachman Ula, Rav Nachman says to Ula, maybe why don't you say different? Why don't you say when the Chachamim say that the poor guy doesn't get it, and it goes to the whatever poor person he sees first, right? Because he can't acquire it on behalf of this individual poor person. Maybe we're talking about that the guy that picked it up was also poor. And the machlekes is slightly different. The Chachamim say even over there you can't do it. The Metzia Kalani Metzia, and I'll prove it to you. Because when it comes to a Metzia, it comes to a lost object. Like in our Mishnah, we have a lost object. Over there, there's no specifications of who's allowed to find it. Money. Right? It's only by paya, which is a poor person's thing, the specifications who could take it. When it comes to a Metzia, a lost object, everyone can take it. And nevertheless, Utanan was taught in the Mishnah. So one person is riding on the animal, Metzia, he sees the object. Says to his friend, Tinaldi, give it to me. Not the other person took it. And we're thinking that he picked it up on behalf of his friend. And then he says, I acquired it for myself. So Zachaba, he acquired it. 1 second. He picked it up for his friend, and then he acquires it. If we would say that even from one poor person to another poor person, that's the argument between Rebbe Eliezer and the Chachamim, which means that the Chachamim are going to hold that you can't take it for a friend ever. Even if you have the rights to take it for yourself, you can't take it for a friend. Which means that over here, when he picked up the lost object, he picked it up for his friend, but he has no rights to pick it up for his friend because the whole world can take it, right? Just like by the food for the poor, when you take it, you can take it for yourself. But if you take it for someone else, you're taking away from all the other poor people. So too, the Chacham say you can't do that. You can't take it away from everyone else if you're not taking it for yourself. So too, the over here, when you're picking up the lost object and you're not taking it for yourself, so you're taking it away from everyone else. And what would be the halacha? That instead of the friend acquiring it, because he can't take it for him, you can only acquire it for yourself. So he acquires it. If that would be the case, then Masnis and Mani, who would be the author of our Mishnah, would be the Rabbanan, would be the Chachamim. Now, the Chachamim argued on Rabbi Eliezer, and the Chachamim say that you can't take it for a friend, but you could take it for yourself. So if that's talking about Me'ani Lani, the Chachamim say you can't take it for a friend, you can take it for yourself. So when this guy picked up the lost object, he took it for his friend, but that doesn't work. So when he switches his mind, he says, I'm taking it for myself. That does work. But if you say, according to you, Ula, that everyone agrees, everyone agrees that from one poor person to another poor person, the second guy acquires it, not the guy that picked it up. He can pick it up mamish for his friend. So if that's the case, Hamani, who would be the author of our Mishnah, he picked it up for his friend, and his friend didn't acquire it. But according to Ula, the friend should have acquired it, because he could have taken it for himself. He could take it for his friend. Hamani, lei Rabbanan v'lei Rebbe Eliezer. Doesn't fit with the Rabbanan, doesn't fit with Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Eliezer would say that even when he can't take it for himself, like if he's a rich man, the friend still acquires it. But according to the Rabbanan, we would say because they both can keep it. So
he could keep it if he's poor.
So right, so he could keep it. So therefore, his friend should acquire.
He's poor also.
If he's poor and his friend's poor, his friend should be able to acquire. So in our case, also when there's a lost object,
But he's keeping it.
yeah, but when he picked it up, he had intention to pick it up for his friend.
Okay,
And now he's switching his mind in the middle before he handed it to him.
This implies that there's safety. Who knows what this person thinks?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, the Edom aspect. The question is really who owns it in actuality. We're discussing the concept here. If someone picks it up, now the act of picking up the item is a kinyan. So if he picked it up on behalf of his friend, if that works, then his friend acquired it. Now he says, I'm keeping it for myself. It's too late. It's not yours. If your friend gives it to you, that's a different story. But he didn't give it to you.
If we find something and we think, oh, we're going to give it to this person, and also if we find something, we buy it for this person.
Yeah.
It's like that person owns it. We can't change our mind after.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. The story, there's a guy that bought a lottery ticket for a poor guy. And he realizes the poor guy won. It's in the middle of the night. The poor guy became like won $1 million. So he runs over to his house. He knocks on the door. He says, "You're a rich man. You won the lottery." If he waits till the morning, he was going to rationalize why he should keep it for himself. So he ran to the guy's house. Anyway, the poor guy says, one second. If I'm a rich man, how dare you wake me up in the middle of the night?" Okay. So This is Reb Nachman's question to Ula, that we don't have we don't have any author, we don't have Rebbe Lezer or other Chachamim to be the author of our Mishnah. Now, granted, Reb Nachman's reading into our Mishnah something that the Mishnah doesn't say specifically, it doesn't say outright. What he's reading into the Mishnah is that the Mishnah is talking about that he picked it up first for his friend, and then he retracts and keeps it for himself. Now, according to that reading of the Mishnah, we have difficulty finding who's going to be the author of the Mishnah. Yeah. There is another way of reading the Mishnah where all of this is not relevant, because he didn't pick it up for his friend, he picked it up for himself. And the whole thing is a mute point. Amalei, Ula responds to Rav Nachman, Masnisen Damer Tchila. Masnisen, the Mishnah is talking about where he says, I acquired it first, I never picked it up for you. The whole kasha, the whole point of Rav Nachman is that he picked it up first for his friend, and then he retracts and he says, no, I'm keeping it for myself. And we're saying that you're allowed to retract because your friend never acquired it, which led me to say that there's a machlekes, even me'ani lani, even one poor person picking it up for another poor person. But all of that is based on the assumption that first he picked it up for his friend to acquire it, and then he retracted. Ula says, you're reading into the Mishnah something it doesn't say. The Mishnah says that he picked it up and he says that I acquired it. So that means he picked it up for himself, picked it, and he says I acquired it. And he's believed because it's still in his hands. It's also logical. Because if you read further in the Mishnah, it says that once he hands it over to the writer, and then he says that I acquired it, he retracts, he sees how much the guy's admiring it. He says, I picked it up first, I acquired it first. Then we don't believe him. Now, what's the reason? When he says, I picked it up first, or I acquired it first. Now, right now, who's holding this item? Let's say it's a watch. Who's holding this watch? The rider is holding it. The person that was walking alongside, he's saying now that I acquired it first, after he handed it to him. So the word first is not necessary, because if he says I acquired it, obviously he means he acquired it first, because right now it's in the hands of the rider. He can't say I acquired it now while you're holding it. Because how does he acquire while he's holding it? It must mean that he meant I acquired it first when I picked it up. So why does it have to say that he acquired it first? It's automatically, it has to be first, because there is no option of acquiring it now after he passed it on to the other person. Yes, very good. Very good. This is very good. This Gemara is by the get as well. Yeah, exactly. So Pshita, it's obvious. Even though we didn't say tchila, it means tchila. It means that I picked it up, that I acquired it first. So why does it say it? It's coming to teach me that in both cases he picked it. He's acquiring it first for himself. The only difference is that while it's still in his hand, he's believed to say it. Once he passes it on, then he's not believed to say it. Yeah. So Ula learns that the point of our Mishnah is a different point. The point of our Mishnah has to do with belief. Do we trust him? If it's in his hands, we trust him. If it's in the other person, the rider's hands, we don't trust him. According to Rav Nachman, the point of our Mishnah is, can he acquire it on behalf of his friend? And if he can, then he can't retract. So the first part of the Mishnah says that you can't acquire it on behalf of your friends. You pick it up for your friend doesn't acquire it. And therefore, when you say that I picked it up for myself, when you say that I'm acquiring it, you acquired it if you're still holding on to it. Once you pass it on to him, then you can't. So what does Rav Nachman do? Why does it say tchila? It says Tana Seifa L'Glui Reisha. The reason why it says tchila in the Seifa, even though it's obvious that he had to have acquired it before, right? Not after he passed it on. It says Seifa Dam Tchila Reisha D'Layam Tchila. We're talking about because it's only in the Seifa where he says that I acquired it first. But in the Reisha, he says he's not saying that I acquired it first. I'm acquiring it now. First, when I picked it up for you. But that doesn't work because if you try to pick up an object for your friend, a lost object, you can't acquire it on behalf of your friend. You can take it for yourself, but you can't take it for your friend because the whole world has rights to that. You have no rights to take it for someone else and cause a loss to the rest of the world. So you're not really acquiring it for your friends. Therefore, when you say that you're taking it for yourself and it's still in your hands, you acquire it. Okay, that's the end of this discussion of the comparison, the Peya and the in our Mishnah. Rav Nachman, Rav Chisda, Damitavayo, and Magbim, Metzia Daf. This is sort of like a conclusion. Now we have the actual statement from Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman and Rav Chisda both say that if you try to pick up a lost object, and not for yourself, but you pick it up for your friend didn't acquire it. And what could happen is that if some third person comes in and pulls it out of your hands, he'll actually be the owner. You didn't acquire it for yourself. You didn't acquire it for your friend. This guy just grabbed it and he takes it.
That's according to these.
So,
Yeah, Rav Nachman, Rav Chisda.
so it wouldn't work the enactment that the rabbis did. So people wouldn't just go and
That's only because he owned it. The enactment was when someone owned something. Here, no one owned it yet. My timer, what's the reason? Why doesn't it work when the person picks it up for his friend, that his friend acquires it? That's because you're grabbing. What happens is like this. Let's say there's a debtor that owes money to to a bunch of creditors. That's the custom. When there's one creditor, there's some others. So someone is walking by, sees that he's just this debtor had just earned some property. He says, "Oh, my friend is one of those creditors. Let me take the property on behalf of my friend." So he can't do that because the other creditors say, "You get out of here. When you take the property for your friend, we're losing out. Let your friend come and take it. You have no rights to mix into this. This is between us and the debtor. When you mix in, we lose out. You can't do that. If your friend was here, then he would take it fine, because he has equal rights that like we have. But for you to come in and start taking for him, that's you're mixing in and you're causing a detriment to us." So the same thing applies when someone finds a lost object. If he takes it for himself, so then fine, he has rights to it. But if he takes it on behalf of someone else, then the rest of the world can tell him, you're taking it for someone else. You have no rights to take for someone else. If you take it for yourself, fine. But if for someone else, let that other guy come and take it. Otherwise, we're taking it. So there's a comparison here between a lost object and a creditor. But you can't mix in. You can't take for another creditor. Okay, Esvei Rav Nachman. Rav has a question to Rav Nachman. Nachman said that if you pick up an object for your friend doesn't acquire it, you can only take it for yourself. If there's a worker that finds a lost object, he keeps it. Keeps it for himself. Yeah. The guy tells him, "Come work with me." He's working, and he keeps it for himself. We have to see exactly the details. When can we say this? If the owner, if the employer says, he tells him specifically, nachish is to weed. What is nachish? How do they translate that? Is to weed, and what's either? Also to weed?
tell.
It says not
Weed for me today.
not cash, not cash.
Nakesh. Okay. So what does it mean to weed?
Weed for me today.
And what's the other one? What's either?
Till for me today.
Till. Uh-huh. Okay. You're going to do some work in the field. He told him specifically what he's doing. So then, if he finds a lost object, then the person can keep it, because that wasn't his job to find lost objects. But if he says to him, "We're going to do work for me today. I'm hiring you for the day. You're going to do whatever work comes up." So then it belongs to the owner. What do we see? According to this, we think that the reason why it belongs to the owner is because when the worker picks it up, he has to pick it up on behalf of the owner, and the owner automatically gets it. The opposite of what Rav Nachman says. Amalei, Rav Nachman responds to Rava, is Shani Payal, the other Kiyad Balabaya. So you're asking me a question that's not a question. When it comes to a worker is not picking it up as a stranger picking it up for someone else. That's not what it is. He is like the hand of the owner. So when he picks it up, he's like a shliach of the owner. Okay.
No.
Till. Okay, good. Rav, but 1 second, how could you say this? Rav says, you're making it look like the worker is a slave, and whatever the slave acquires, the owner acquires. A worker is not a slave. A worker can quit whenever he wants.
Right. He's still working.
Even in midday, he can say, "Okay, I'm out of here." He's not a slave. So why are you saying that automatically everything he acquires belongs to the owner? He's a free person. I'm a lay. So, who's responding? Is this Rav Nachman? No. This is Rav Nachman. Nachman's responding. You're right. He can quit whenever he wants, but until he quits, he's considered a like the hand of the owner, which is like he's a slave until he's not a slave. So but when he quits, that's another reason. It says the Jewish people are slaves to me, says God, and they're not slaves to other slaves. Everyone is a slave to Hashem, and you're not a slave to slaves, which gives you the rights to quit whenever you want.
Does it make a difference if it's like hourly or like per job?
Yeah. Over here, it was more hourly than per job. Then there wasn't it wasn't a contract. It's work for me today. Amar Reb Chia bar Rav and Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Reb Chia bar Rav says in the name of Reb Chia bar Abba, the famous student of Rabbi Yochanan, says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the opposite of what Reb Nachman held. So Rabbi Yochanan holds that you can acquire something on behalf of your friend. Okay, if that's the case, so why in the Mishnah does it say that when you say that I'm keeping it for myself, that you acquire it? You picked it up for your friend. Your friend should have acquired it. You can't retract. So the Rabbi Yochanan says, you're going to ask from our Mishnah that it seems not like me. It says, our Mishnah is Damar Tinali, that's because the friend didn't want you to acquire it on his behalf. He said, give it to me and I'll acquire it. He's like, I don't need you. Just hand it over to me. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to make the kinyan myself. So if that's the case, you want to make the kinyan yourself, okay, I'm keeping it.
So he refuses to turn it over.
He refuses no, this is not working now. There's a rider on an animal. There's a guy on the street. The rider says, hand it to me so I can make a kinyan on it. And the person picks it up on his behalf, but the person doesn't want him to acquire it for him. He wants to make the kinyan himself. So then when he says, okay, you know what, I'm keeping it for myself. So he picked it up, he sees it's a real Rolex. So he says, okay, I'm keeping it for myself. So then he can actually keep it. He picked it up for his friend because his friend rejected that kinyan. His friend said, I'm going to acquire it myself. If he would have said, acquire it for me, take it on my behalf.
Be a witness to this. If there was another witness, then I feel like
Yeah, the witness part in here.
we just don't say about this.
Right. These things it's going to end up in court, and it's going to be all on the question like if someone's lying and all of that. But we're not discussing the witness aspect here, but discussing like what's the fact of who acquired it. Okay. Let's see the next Mishnah.
So they invent something. Usually, hire somebody to do some work. He invents something. Does that belong to the guy who employed him, or?
Over here, it looks like it belongs to the guy that employed him. If he was hired for that specifically, then for sure. If he was hired to do one thing and he gets something else, then that could be different.
So he's working in my lab. I own the lab. I hire him.
Yeah.
He discovers something. Like he puts a chemical into something else, and wow. Does it belong to the owner of the lab?
It belongs to the owner of the lab. But if it was, let's say, what would be a nice question is you hired him for his physics and he discovers something in biology. Right. So he could probably claim, he may be able to say, you didn't hire me for that. You hired me for this. And this was my own discovery I happened to make. I don't know. That would end up in court.
He's getting paid. Like everything that he does belongs to the employer.
Automatically? everything.
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I guess.
Could be.
It's the same thing as a slave. And
Could
he
be.
can acquire his owners.
Could be. But over here, we had a case where he said, do this for me, do that for me. And then he finds a lost object, he can keep it.
In the case of a slave, it would still belong to the owner.
Yeah, but that's by a slave. If he hires him to say, till for me, or this, and he finds a lost object, he keeps it. Okay. He sees an object on the floor, and he falls on it. Yeah. And he fell on it. Someone else comes and pulls it and grabs it. The one that grabbed it, he's the one that acquires it. Falling on it didn't do it. Remember, there was this like case, a famous case with the baseball, where a baseball went flying into the stands, and someone like caught it, but he missed, but it fell out of his hands and it rolled somewhere, and someone else got it. And the first guy claimed that it was his because it was in his hands first, but he didn't really have possession. It's like anyway. What happened over here is this guy falls over this item, and the other guy pulls it away.
He's bigger than me. He's a thug.
The other guy acquires it.
I'm
sorry, yeah.
It's for me as it's almost a daily occurrence. A kid's about to sit down in a chair, and then another kid pulls away the chair because he wants it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's different, like ethically. Like, if you see someone's gonna sit down, like it's
Right.
not very nice.
Right. Right.
It's not a nice thing, but it's what happens. And I usually give it to the person that's about to sit down on the chair.
There's two things. There's the halacha and then there's the musar shmuz.
In this case, he sat on the chair and he pulled it out of him.
Right. Here the guy sat down already, and the other guy's taking it.
He's a big guy.
Some Rish Lakish, Misham Arbakayim Bardla. Rish Lakish says in the name of Arbakayim Bardla, Arba Mishaladam Kainisle B'chol Makim, that a person's 4 cubits acquire for him wherever he is. It means as you walk around and there's a lost object within your 4 cubits, it becomes yours. My timer, Tzkina Rabbanon. Why did the sages institute this? The Le'asil Intui, people shouldn't fight once you're in the 4 cubits. So no one should come in there and take anything. Okay. Amar Abaya. We have to get back to what's going on in our Mishnah. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Moisiv Reb Chia bar Yosef Peya. We have a question from Peya that Reb Chia bar Yosef asked. Amar Rava says, Moisiv Yaakov Baridi Nezikin. We have a question on this from Nezikin, which Reb Yaakov Baridi asks. Amar Abaya, let's go back to Abaya. Abaya says, Moisiv Reb Chia bar Yosef Peya. Reb Chia bar Yosef has a question from Peya on this statement about acquiring something. Does not to mix Peya b'zarek al ashar. Someone takes, it's hard for him to collect all the Peya. He's taking Peya and it's a lot. So he takes whatever he's collected and he throws it over the other stuff that he didn't actually pick up. So what he's trying to do by this is trying to say, oh, that whole pile is mine. But on the bottom of the pile is stuff that he never picked up. He doesn't have anything. I guess it means of what he threw it on. I think what he picked up is his. What he threw it on is not his. So, nafalayala, if he falls over it, paras talisala, or he spreads his talis over it, so he like takes his coat off and throws it over the whole pile. He says it's mine. Then ma'avir and I say, man, they remove him from it. That's not a way of acquiring it. Get out of here. The same thing would be with bundles that were forgotten. You can't throw something over it and say that it's yours. And if you say that 4 cubits acquire for you, why don't these 4 cubits acquire? It's a kasha from Peya, kasha and Peya and Rish Lakish. The answer is because he didn't say that I want my 4 cubits to acquire. When it says v'tikkun rabbanan, but if this is instituted by the sages, if he doesn't say it, my havi, who cares? You should say it. But he says no. Given the nafal, the fact that he fell over it, because he was doing a different action, he's showing that he doesn't want the institution of the sages to acquire it with 4 cubits. He's trying to acquire it with falling on it. So you want to acquire with falling on? Okay, falling on it doesn't work. If you would have done nothing, then you would have acquired it. But the fact that you're doing something, you're making it even worse.
If he's like in the corner of the field and there's nobody there, but does he still have to say this for 4 cubits? If there's nobody there?
Yeah, because if someone else comes right away, he can take it. Unless
that person that comes, didn't you hear him say it?
Yeah, but the question is what's right? Who owns it? In order for him to own it, it doesn't say. It says actually that he doesn't have to say it. So why does he have to say it? If he threw something on it, then he would have to say it. But over here, he doesn't have to say it. The problem is he didn't say it. Plus, he threw something. Now, your discussion about what's considered right is there is a Gemara about if someone is if there's a poor person that's trying to get a piece of cake, and someone else comes and takes it, it says he's called a Russia. It's called a Russia for taking it. Now, we discussed that also when it comes to a sale. Someone's trying to buy something and someone else rushes in and buys it. That's also because why do you have to buy exactly the one that I was looking at? Go buy the other one. You don't have to take this. That doesn't apply when you can't find something else, or if it's a Metzia or something like that. You don't say that. Why don't you go find another Metzia? Right?
So you're in line, and someone cuts in, and someone else cuts in, and you're not moving ahead because everybody's cutting in. You get there, it's not there. Does that make them
right
violation of this?
It could be. Could be.
Yesterday we discussed about the whole getting of the animal, like whether it was acquisition or not acquisition. Wouldn't this be like a better idea just to say not 4 cubits acquired?
Yeah. Yeah. Yesterday, you wanted to acquire the animal because of what you were saying. Could have just said, by 4 cubits acquire. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work in every place. It says it works in every place. It doesn't really work. Now we'll see in a second. Rav Papa says, Kita kinale arba armas ba'alma. When did the 4 cubits work? That's only in general. That's talking about on a certain area of Rosh Hashanah, which is like the edges of the Rosh Hashanah, but not. However, besade the balabayas. But in a field that belongs to someone else, like the Kinali Rabbanan, the sages didn't say that you have 4 cubits in someone else's field. When even though the Eibishter allows you to go into that field to take the payah, but you only have the rights to go in and to walk and to collect payah. But the Eibishter didn't give it to you that it should become your 4 cubits, and everywhere you walk, you start acquiring everything as you walk. That wasn't given to you. Amar Rava. Okay, so that was the question of Abaya from Peya. Abaya says that Reb Chia Bar Yosef asked from Peya. That was the question, and that was our answer. We have 2 answers. Either he doesn't acquire it because he fell on it. He's showing that he doesn't want to use the 4 cubits, or he doesn't acquire it because it was in the rishus of the owner of the field. It's in someone else's field. Amar Rava. Rava says, "Meiser Yaakov Baridin Nazikin." The question was from Nazikin, which is basically our Mishnah. And the question was asked by Rabbi Yaakov Baridi. He says, if he sees the lost object and he falls on it, someone else comes and takes it. That's the person that takes it acquires it, not the guy that fell on it. And if you want to say that your 4 cubits should acquire for you wherever you are, why doesn't he acquire it? He fell on it. How much closer do you want him to get to it? And we're talking about because he didn't say, I want to acquire it. Why does he have to say it? This was instituted by the sages. It should work automatically. My answer is because he fell on it. Exactly the answer that we gave before, that if you would have done nothing, we would have said you would acquire it with the 4 cubits. But the fact that you fell on it, you're showing that you want to acquire it with something else, not with the 4 cubits. Rav Shesha says, Kita Kino, very similar to Rav Papa's answer. Kita Kino Rabbanan besimta leidach kirabim. Where did the sages institute that it works? You see, Rav Papa says Ba'alma, which probably includes the Rishus Rabbin, that Dalet Amos is kind of. Rav Shesha says no. That when does it work? That 4 Amos, that's only besimta. Simta is like an edge of the Rishus Rabbin. Leidach kirabim, people over there don't push. Rishus Rabbin, the kadach kirabim, but in a public area where people are pushing, like the kin rabbanon, the sages didn't institute. But the Gemara says, but it says they instituted everywhere. It says, Kol makom lasi yitzid Rishus Rabbin. Also, the sides of the Rishus Rabbin, like the sidewalk, that would also, you could also acquire there. Okay, so we had a question from our Mishnah, and we gave an answer that it's because our Mishnah, he's doing something to show that he doesn't want his 4 cubits to acquire. Rish Lakish also says, a young girl, if her husband throws her get, let's say she's married by the father, so she needs a get, and he throws the get to her, or in her courtyard, or in her 4 cubits, she's not divorced. Even though if it would have been an adult in her courtyard and in her 4 cubits, she would be divorced. By a ketana, she's not divorced. Rabbi Yochanan argues on Rish Lakish, and he says in the name of Rabbi Yanai, says that's not true. She's divorced. Why is there a machlekes? What's going on? I have a machlekes if a girl has a courtyard or if she has 4 cubits. But my committee, what's the machlekes here? Mar Savar, this master holds, which is Rabbi Yochanan, that her courtyard is similar to her hand. Just like she has a hand. A hand over here means that you can put her get into her hand and she can acquire it even though she's a minor. She can acquire it and she becomes divorced. So just like she has a hand, she also has a courtyard. A courtyard is like one big hand, 4 cubit hand. She also has a courtyard. In a courtyard, if she's standing next to her courtyard or if she has 4 cubits, it's going to work. Marsav Rish Lakish holds, the courtyard is not her hand. The courtyard is like her messenger. And she doesn't have, she can't make a messenger because she's a child. She doesn't have the courtyard. So in other words, the question is, under what category does the courtyard work? Does it work like a long hand or does it work like a messenger? If it works like a long hand, she has a hand, and so now she has a long hand. If it's a messenger, she doesn't have a messenger and she doesn't have a courtyard. Yeah. Because it's a minor. It's minor, can't have. Whenever it says shlichus, it says the word ish. As man, and it means it needs to be an adult.
It says minor because she's like the little.
Yeah, exactly. 1 second. How could you say chatzah has to do with shlichus? We're going to ask a basic question that ain't shliach ledvar avera, and we know that a chatzah can do an avera for you. How does that work? But Tanya was taught in a brisa. The yadai, if you find the thief with the object in his hand, ain't the yeli yadai. That's only if you find the object in his hand. Yes, gonna have to pay double. How do you know if you find it in his courtyard or if it's in his roof or his enclosed area? How do you know the same thing? Which means even if he never came into his hand, but what happened was something flew in or ran into his courtyard and he closed the door on it to steal it. He's acquiring it. Now, 1 second. If a courtyard acquires only because of a messenger, turns out that we have a messenger doing an avera, and it goes back to the one that sent him, and the one that sent him is guilty. But how could you have? We know that it doesn't trace back to the person that sent him. It's the one that did it. Ravina says, 1 second. You're doing a comparison here, but you have to look at the logic. When do we say that you can't have a messenger doing an avera. It doesn't go back to the person that sent him. It's the one that did it. That's if the person that's doing it has his own obligations. So we tell the person, why do you listen to me? You should have listened to Hashem. But over here, what do you mean? The courtyard should have listened to Hashem? It's not a bar chiyuva. He has no obligation. So therefore, you don't have the claim on the courtyard. Why did you listen to Hashem? Why do you listen to me? So therefore, it traces its way back to the one that closed the gate. Right. If that's the case, that it's only because of a bar chiyuva, someone that has that's obligated in mitzvahs. But if someone tells a woman or to a slave, to gunvalid, you know that a woman or a slave don't need to pay back. So, and he tells him, go and steal from me. Do you want to say that the one that sent him should be chayav? One second. You're rushing through this. This is not what's happening. They're not allowed to steal. They just don't have the money to pay. And the Tanan, we have a Mishnah in this Garshish and if they get divorced or if they get freed, they have to pay. So of course they're b'nei chiyuva. Okay. Now the reason why we came into this question is because we established that what's the difference between a courtyard and the regular shtech l'dvar avera is that the courtyard is not b'nei chiyuva, it's not obligated in mitzvahs. Rav Sama Amar Hechem Ein Shtech L'Dvar Avera Hechem V'Bay Ovid V'Bay Ovid. Rav Sama says it doesn't have to do with if it's a bar chiyuv or not. It has to do with if it has free choice. Chatzer the Bal Karchi Ma'asav La Mechayev Shalchay. But a chatzer that has that doesn't have free choice, then the one that did it is going to be obligated. My binay, what's the difference between these two answers? It could be nayu kayin. By the way. Do they start on time now, or do they have to start late because of the? They start late. Oh, so then I can finish this. Come on. Okay, what's the difference? What's the difference between these two answers? Very interesting. Kayin da Amalei Yisrael. Let's say a kayin tells to a non-kayin. He says, "Say b'kadosh liisha grusha. Go and marry for me a divorced woman." That means that you're a shliach. Give a divorced woman kedushin on my behalf. Here's a ring. Go to that divorcee and marry her to me. Say, with this ring, you'll be married to Mr. Cohen. Inami. Or also, now the idea over here is that the Yisrael is not obligated not to marry a divorcee. He's not a Kayan. He's allowed to marry a divorcee, so there's no mitzvah on him not to marry a divorcee. So when he does that, you can't claim he has free choice. He has free choice. He doesn't have to do it, but he doesn't have the obligation of the mitzvah of not to marry a divorcee. So you can't claim to him, you should have listened to Hashem. What I mean, Hashem never told me.
Yeah, but he would be like enabling somebody.
Okay, now enabling is another issue.
Just like the kid.
There's another issue of enabling, which Tosfos discusses.
Just like the kid and the woman. Okay, they don't have to pay back, but they're not allowed to steal.
Okay. There's another issue that you're bringing up. That he is enabling, which Tosfos mentioned. Okay, that's a separate issue. That's not the mitzvah of not to marry a divorcee. There's another mitzvah about don't put a stumbling block. Okay, Inami, another example is ish d'amalei leisha. If a man tells a woman, akfili katan, shave the payas off this child, off this boy. Now, why is it a child, even if it's an adult? The answer is that usually an adult won't allow, but the child doesn't know. So if it has to do with free choice, the one that sent him, the woman or the Yisrael, to marry the Kayan, wouldn't be obligated because the messenger had free choice. They didn't have to do it. But if we're looking at if the person that's the messenger had this mitzvah, this messenger did not have this mitzvah. Because a woman that's allowed to shave her beard, if a woman has a beard, she's allowed to cut it. And therefore, she's also allowed to cut her own payas. That's we learned beard and payas are connected. And so therefore, she's allowed to cut her own payas. She's also allowed to cut someone else's payas. right? She doesn't have that any obligation of cutting someone's payas. I mean, she has the stumbling block issue, right? But when someone sends her to do that, she can say, "Well, that wasn't. You're going to claim to me that I should have listened to Hashem. Why did I listen to you? Hashem never told me I can't cut payas." Okay. Since they're not, they don't have the obligation, so we would say that the messenger is exempt, and the one that sent them should be chayav. Does anyone really hold that a courtyard is not considered a hand? Well, Tanya, you have a brisa that says like this. It says that you write the get and you put it into her hand. It says yada, it says her hand. Ain't li yada, I only know her hand. How do you know that you can also put it into a courtyard, or to a roof, or to an enclosed area? It says you place it. It means that it could also be in other areas as well. But basically, it has to be her hand. So those other places are just considered her hand. So the Gemara says, "Lenient get when you're dealing with the divorce, everyone agrees that it's considered her hand." Now that would mess up the Gemara before, where we said Ketana in Lachatzer, we're talking about a get. I guess we're retracting from that. Okay. Pligi, where's the machlekes? Linyan Metzia, when it comes to a lost object. Marsavi Alfina Metzia Meget. One says that just like a child, a young girl has a courtyard regarding receiving her get, that if he throws it into her courtyard, she's divorced. So to the same thing would apply to a Metzia. Marsavi Alfina Metzia Meget. The other one says you can't learn monetary laws from ritual laws. By ritual laws it works. By monetary laws it doesn't work. There's another answer. When it comes to a young girl, the fact that she has a courtyard to receive her get also gives her a courtyard for a lost object. However, but the machlekes here is regarding a child. Does it work for a child?
The get could be given to her against her will. A lost item.
Very good. Right. Hill's pointing out that there is a major difference biblically, that a get could be against her will, not rabbinically, but biblically a get could be given against her will, and a lost item can only be acquired if she wants it. You don't have to acquire things that are in your courtyard. Right? If someone receives in the mail chametz on Pesach, because they're what do they give out things that they should buy, samples. They give samples. You say, I'm not kind of. You don't have to acquire it just because it's in your mailbox, right? So I'm acquiring what I want.
And the mailbox is considered like their property.
And mailbox is their property. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, technically, I wanted to have someone come over and literally bring a sandwich.
Oh yeah. That's the Gemara. Here the machlekes is about a boy, not about a girl. One says we learn a boy from a girl. The other one says that we don't learn a boy from a girl. If you want, you could say that's with these statements that we had before. Rish Lakish says a girl doesn't have a courtyard. Rabbi Yochanan says a girl does have a courtyard. If you want, you could say they're each talking about different cases. This one's talking about a get. This one's talking about Metzia. No one's arguing. Or you could say one's talking about a girl, one's talking about a boy. You could say it like that. Okay, you can answer it up. Let's leave it over here.
So if someone drops some pollution on my land,